Our planet is on fire. The Earth is burning up. From scorching heat waves to raging wildfires, our planet is sending us an unmistakable SOS. Ice caps melt at an alarming rate. Sea levels rise, swallowing coastlines and displacing millions. This is not a future threat. This is our reality. Just look at it. We are living through a climate emergency, a crisis fueled by decades of unchecked greed and willful ignorance. The very systems that sustain life on Earth are under attack and losing the battle. Our actions have consequences. The time for denial is over. The time for action is now. The air we breathe is thick with smoke and the stench of devastation. Our children inherit a world on the brink. How much fucking hotter does it have to get before you act? How many more lives must be lost? How many more ecosystems destroyed? The clock is ticking and the stakes couldn't be higher. The science is screaming. The scientific evidence is overwhelming, a deafening alarm that has been ringing for decades. The planet is warming at an unprecedented rate, driven by human activity, primarily the burning of fossil fuels and animal agriculture. 97% of climate scientists agree this is real, it is us, and it is deadly. Yet, despite the irrefutable data, the warnings from experts, and the visible changes in our world, many still choose to deny the truth. They cling to misinformation and sow seeds of doubt, delaying crucial action with their dangerous rhetoric and bullshit. Their denial is a weapon wielded against the future of humanity. We cannot afford to let these voices of denial drown out the urgent calls for change. We must listen to the scientists, heed their warnings, and act on their recommendations. The science is not a matter of opinion, it is a matter of fact. And the facts are clear. We are running out of time. This shit is real. We are feeling the heat, a world already transformed. The impacts of climate change are no longer a distant threat. They are our present reality. Extreme weather events, once rare, are becoming increasingly common and more severe. Hurricanes are stronger, droughts are longer, and wildfires are larger and more destructive. The Earth is telling us in no uncertain terms that it is hurting. We are killing it and ourselves in the process. From the melting glaciers of the Arctic to the bleached coral reefs all over the globe, the fingerprints of climate change are everywhere. These changes are not just environmental, they are deeply interconnected with social, economic, and political instability. We are witnessing mass displacement, food shortages, and water scarcity, all exacerbated by a warming planet. These are not isolated incidents. They are interconnected symptoms of a planet in crisis. The longer we wait to act, the more severe these impacts will become, pushing us closer to a point of no return. We must act now, not just to mitigate the worst effects of climate change, but to build a more just and sustainable future for all. The true human cost. Suffering and displacement. Behind the statistics and scientific projections lies a deeply human story of suffering and loss. Climate change is not just an environmental crisis. It is a humanitarian crisis of unprecedented scale. Millions of people are already being displaced from their homes, forced to flee rising seas, extreme weather events, and dwindling resources. Entire communities are being uprooted, their cultures and livelihoods threatened by the changing climate. The most vulnerable among us, the poor, the marginalized, and future generations, are bearing the brunt of this crisis. This is a grave injustice, a violation of fundamental human rights. We cannot ignore the human faces of this crisis. We have a moral obligation to act, to stand in solidarity with those on the front lines of climate change, and to demand justice for all those who are suffering. Their stories must be heard, their voices amplified, and their rights protected. For decades, a powerful and well-funded denial machine, fueled by fossil fuel interests, has worked tirelessly to sow doubt and confusion about the science of climate change. This is well documented and proven factual. These merchants of doubt, driven by greed and a callous disregard for the future of our planet, have engaged in a systematic campaign of misinformation and manipulation. Their tactics are insidious, designed to mislead the public and delay meaningful action. They cherry-pick data, fund bogus studies, and attack the credibility of legitimate scientists. Their goal is not to engage in honest debate, but to protect their profits at the expense of the planet. We must be vigilant in exposing these tactics and holding those responsible accountable. We must support independent journalism and scientific research, and we must demand transparency from our elected officials. The truth matters, and we cannot allow it to be drowned out by the lies of the denial machine. The failure of our political leaders to act decisively on climate change is a betrayal of epic proportions. They have failed to heed the warnings of scientists, ignored the pleas of their constituents, and prioritized short-term profits over the long-term health of our planet. Their inaction is not only a sign of ignorance, it is a calculated choice driven by political expediency and a deep-seated allegiance to the fossil fuel industry. They are gambling with the future of humanity, and their legacy will be one of cowardice and failure. We must demand more from our leaders. We need bold, transformative action, not incremental half measures. We need to hold them accountable for their promises, and we need to elect leaders who understand the urgency of this crisis and are willing to fight for a just and sustainable future. The silence of the majority is deafening. In the face of this existential threat, too many remain passive, complacent, and disengaged. Get off your ass and be part of the solution. Many of you acknowledge the reality of climate change, but fail to grasp the urgency of the situation. Your inaction is not benign. It is a form of complicity. We are all complicit in this crisis, through our consumption patterns, our lifestyle choices, and our silence. But we can also be part of the solution. We must move beyond apathy and despair and embrace a sense of collective responsibility. We must break our silence, raise our voices, and demand change. We must challenge the status quo, disrupt business as usual, and hold those in power accountable. Our planet is worth fighting for, and we must act now before it's too late. Beyond fossil fuels, a just transition. Breaking free from the grip of the fossil fuel industry is paramount. We need a rapid and just transition to a clean energy economy, one that prioritizes renewable resources, energy efficiency, and a radical reduction in our carbon footprint. This transition must be just, ensuring that workers in the fossil fuel industry are not left behind, and that the benefits of a clean energy future are shared equitably. We need to invest in green jobs, sustainable infrastructure, and communities that are resilient to the impacts of climate change. This is not just an environmental imperative, it is an economic opportunity. Investing in clean energy will create jobs, stimulate innovation, and build a more prosperous and equitable future for all. We have the technology, the resources, and the moral imperative to make this transition. What we lack is the political will. The challenges we face are daunting, but they are not insurmountable. Throughout history, social movements have proven that ordinary people, united by a common purpose, can achieve extraordinary things. The fight for climate justice is no different. From the streets of our cities to the halls of power, people are rising up, demanding action, and holding their leaders accountable. Students are skipping school to demand a future. Indigenous communities are leading the fight to protect their lands and waters. Scientists are speaking truth to power. This is a global movement spanning continents, cultures, and generations. We are united by a shared sense of urgency, a deep love for our planet, and an unwavering belief in our collective power to create a better future. This is a call to arms. a rallying cry for all who care about the future of our planet and the well-being of generations to come. We can no longer afford to be bystanders in this fight. The time for complacency is over. The time for action is now. We must all become climate warriors using our voices, our votes, and our choices to demand change. We must challenge the status quo, disrupt business as usual, and hold those in power accountable. This is not a fight for some distant future. It is a fight for our present, for our children, and for the very soul of humanity. We have a moral obligation to act, to stand up for what is right, and to fight for a just and sustainable future for all. The time for excuses is over. The time for action is now. Despite the dire warnings, the overwhelming evidence, and the slow pace of change, there is still hope. The future is not yet written, and we have the power to change course. Every action we take, no matter how small, can make a difference. We must find hope in the growing global movement for climate justice, in the courage of young activists, and in the resilience of communities on the front lines of this crisis. Hope is not passive, it is an active choice, a commitment to fight for a better future. We must embrace solutions, invest in renewable energy, and build a more sustainable and equitable world. We must never give up, never lose sight of the goal, and never stop fighting for the future we want to see. The choices we make today will determine the fate of our planet and the legacy we leave behind. Will we be remembered as the generation that allowed greed and apathy to destroy our planet? Or will we be the generation that rose to the challenge, embraced our collective responsibility, and created a just and sustainable future for all? The time for denial is over. The time for action is now. Let us choose wisely, act boldly, and fight tirelessly for the future we want to see. The fate of our planet and the future of humanity depends on it. I hope this video sinks in and helps you understand just how important it is to do your part. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay safe and be the best version of yourself.